Mr. Showalter had finished a session at a local congregation in Hartselle, Alabama. He gathered his materials and he went to the boarding house that he was staying in while conducting that singing school. When he arrived there, he found that 2 letters had been delivered there for him, and Mr. Showalter always tried to keep close contact with as many of his former pupils as he could. These 2 letters were from 2 of his former pupils who were both in the very same situation. Each of them had recently lost their wives. And they wrote him a letter each to let him know, and obviously to seek his counsel and comfort. He sat down at his desk and he opened the Scriptures to try to find a verse that would be right back. I walked off and left my clicker. A verse that would be appropriate to comfort these 2 gentlemen with. And he opened his Bible to Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 27, which says, "The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms." Interestingly enough, that's the only time the phrase everlasting arms is used in the Old Testament. As Mr. Showalter from all alarms, leaning on the everlasting arms. He went ahead and finished his letters to those 2 grieving pupils. Then he took up a piece of paper and he began another note. He wrote a note then to his good friend Elisha Hoffman. Now you know Mr. Hoffman. Well, you really don't know him. He died in 1929. But you sing his songs all the time. Is thy heart right with God? Are you washed in the blood? Glory to His name. To Christ be true. He wrote that little note to Mr. Hoffman and he said, "I've come up with what I think is a good chorus for a hymn based on Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 27, but I can't come up with any verses." There in Deuteronomy chapter 33, he was both reminding them of all of the ways that God had held them up and supported them with those everlasting arms. And he was also pointing to the future. Everlasting arms would be there. Matthew Henry, the Bible commentator, wrote these words in 1706 about that particular verse. He said, "However low the people of God are at any time brought, and the faith each." But I believe they are very fitting words about that inspiration. The passage, verse 3, where David says, "On the day I called, you answered me. You made me bold with strength. When I called, you answered me. You made me bold and stout-hearted." Bold and stout-hearted. I don't know about you, but that's what I want to be as a Christian. I want to be that way in my everyday life. I want to be that way when I go to work. I want to be that way when I come home. I want to be that way when I stand in this pulpit. I want to be that way every minute of my life. What about you? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about being bold and stout-hearted. Those, I believe, are 2 entirely separate and different terms, not really dependent upon one another, and yet at the same time, when they are both present, together they complement one another. For the purpose of our study this morning, let's separate them and let's first of all take a look at the matter of bold as a child of God. In our lesson text, that word bold in Psalm 138 comes from a Hebrew word which literally means his son, about the dangers that may come before him, and especially and specifically in the form of an unscrupulous woman. He talks about the woman dressed as a harlot who will speak to him with a bold face. Proverbs